Hey, welcome to the latest edition of the Wellbeing Show. I have to say, I'm sort of slightly amused by this one because I had a whole week of trying to get Sarah, my guest, on because of my sort of neurodiverse ADHD traits of not putting her in my diary and stuff like that. She's been phoning me up going, "Are we on?" And I'm like, "Are we? Oh no, what do I do now?" So it's been a classic situation, and it's amusing because Sarah has had a later in life diagnosis of her own ADHD. And we're going to talk a bit about that. Sarah's a scientist, a teacher, and now the proud owner of an ADHD diagnosis, which is quite a significant thing to get given the state of waiting lists in the NHS at the moment. It's a bit of a marathon. Before we get to that, folks, we're going to be talking about all of those things in Sarah's life. Really interesting story. Do remember that this show goes out as a pre-record. I'm really happy to hear from you. My number's 07506 319 745. Drop me a line on WhatsApp. If you're calling from outside the UK, +44, drop the first zero. But don't call during the show because I might be out with friends doing something social and I'll probably get grumpy with you. So it's not live, although it looks live. Do send me a message. And similarly, I can pass on messages to Sarah. Will say she might put up some contact details of hers at the end of this because I know that she provides tutoring and coaching. And people might be interested in that. That's enough from me. Sarah, welcome. Where are you?
You. I'm based in sunny Lincolnshire, so just on the coast here, just by Mablethorpe.
Great. Are
Um,
you gonna get the warmth today? We've got sort of, I think, 20 degrees projected.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's beautiful blue skies outside right now. My office is in my conservatory, so I get
Right.
to look over the over
We're
the
not
paddock.
we're not apparently gonna have you Jack Russell joining us today. Your husband's
No, my gorgeous husband's taken him to the beach for a nice long walk.
oh pity. Would have been nice to have the Jack Russell running around yapping at us.
Yeah,
I sort
yeah.
of think of myself as a bit of a Jack Russell with my own ADHD traits. That's what
Yeah.
I'm like. I really identify with that type of energy, to be honest.
So do I until he starts barking, and then I'm like, please be quiet.
That's what my friends say about me. Just stop it, Noel. So have you always been in Lincolnshire? Is that your sort of home base, as it were?
So I grew up in Stamford, born. That's where I was born and bred, and then ended up going to university in South Bank University in London, to study biochemistry. And
So
um,
where is Stamford so that people know? Locate it in the UK for us.
South Bank University. Oh, Lincolnshire or
Stamford.
South. Um,
Stamford. You grew up in Stamford,
Stamford.
right?
So Stamford, if you imagine that kind of lump on the side of Lincolnshire on the
Yeah,
right hand side of the UK as you look at
yeah,
it, that's Lincolnshire really.
yeah.
Um, and so Stamford's towards the bottom. So you've kind of got the London, then Cambridge, and then
Stamford Bridge comes to mind, the big famous
ah
Viking battle or something.
yeah. So I think that's more. I don't know much about the Battle of Stamford Bridge, I'm afraid,
Okay,
but
right.
yeah.
That's not it. So what was it like growing up in Stamford? You have brothers, sisters, or
I've got two brothers and a sister.
right?
A very eclectic, blended family.
Yeah,
A difficult family. I think my mum had ADHD. She's not with us any longer to be able to confirm or deny that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
looking back, I can now see traits in her, and talking to cousins and others, they're kind of going, yeah, we can
Yeah.
see that in the family.
And so
Um,
she had sort of issues about organization and a bit of emotionality and all that sort of
Oh, definitely emotional. One of my biggest stories was Christmas Day one year. I can't even remember what year it was. And my mum had got up early and put the turkey in the oven, and it wasn't cooked by the time that she wanted to have dinner.
stuff. Yeah.
And I just remember the turkey going across the room, the tea towel going everywhere, this massive emotional explosion, all of us hiding for fear of saying something else that had upset her.
Yeah.
And then I think, we may have ended up with chips from that's my memory. And,
That's
and
right.
somebody else sat there may have a different because we all remember things differently. But But
Pass it,
I
pass
remember
it
those.
to foreign country, Sarah. It's fine. It belongs to us, and we've got a choice as to what to do with it. So was that quite a frightening or quite a funny upbringing?
Um, Frightening at times because you were always walking on
Yeah,
eggshells. And that's a phrase that people have used about me a lot. We're
yeah,
walking on eggshells around you.
absolutely. That's
We don't know how to relate to you. We don't know how to speak to you, but for fear of an outburst, for fear
I'm
of an
literally
explosion.
remembering a conversation with a colleague when I worked in Edinburgh, who came to tell me something, and she sort of expressed relief that she got the nice version of me, not the unnice version. I'm absolutely very familiar with this sort of characterization and understanding, and I didn't get it really at that time. I didn't get it. Did your mum have other issues around? Because sometimes with undiagnosed ADHD, you can have issues around misuse of alcohol and things like that. And
Not alcohol, not for her, but I think there was definitely food, and I think my mum was always searching for love. She
yeah,
was always searching for acceptance. So I think there was a certain amount of, if I look back at her life history, I think there was a certain amount of searching for acceptance from the wrong kind of people. She ended up marrying an alcoholic who was abuser.
that's a
My
very
not my
typical
dad.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my dad is a beautiful human being who is one of the nicest humans in the world. Um, so but she ended up with the
Somebody
wrong kind of people.
equally unpredictable and strange for different reasons. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's very familiar story, to be honest. Did you have much contact with that guy, or were you kept away?
No, that was before because my mum had had a number of relationships.
Right,
So it was one of my other siblings'
all right.
fathers. So I didn't know him. I never knew him.
Well, lucky for
But
you, really. I grew up with an alcoholic
yeah,
father. Not a pleasant experience. Not one I would encourage anybody to engage in, to be honest.
no,
Um,
yeah.
but so, what's your sort of? You were good at school, I presume. You're not, or what was that
Um,
like?
Good at school, but all left everything till the last minute.
Yeah,
Always, I tell my students now, revise little and often. Let's give you structure. But boy, was I bad at that.
yeah.
you know, I literally left every test, every exam till the last minute. Um,
Very familiar. I was very successful at school, but I would literally revise the last 6 months of the year. I wouldn't bother for the 2 years of the coursework and stuff like that. And in fact, my teachers sort of knew that and just let me go home during my A levels. So there's no point in you being in the classroom, I'll just go home and do what you do. And
yeah,
they sort of knew that. And that's how I got through life, was that I needed that concentrated pressure.
yes,
I
yeah.
couldn't cope with that pressure.
Without a deadline, nothing ever happens. I often say to people now, give me a deadline. Tell me it needs to be done by Tuesday. I'll do it Monday night or 4 o'clock Tuesday morning,
Yeah.
but I will do it and I will have it to you by Tuesday.
Yeah. I
Uh,
still do it. My PR team might listen to this, but the Nat in my PR team who gives me the articles to write, I ask her for a deadline, but she knows full well that I'll crash through it. And so she sort of has adapted to my needs to be told, do this now. And she's not afraid of saying that to me because I do need that because my brain just won't let me do that.
yeah, absolutely.
So what was
Yeah.
it like at school as were you distractible and all that? Did you have those types
No,
of
no, none of those tendencies. I wasn't a tapper, I wasn't a fidgeter. I was definitely a daydreamer, but nobody can see you daydreaming.
yeah.
You can look interested and be daydreaming. You can look interested and nodding and not be in the room at all. And
I'm
that's
actually not daydreaming, but I really identify with that. I am interested in what you say. But no, literally, I remember this at school.
yeah,
I would be somewhere on Mars, and it looked like I was in the room, but I wasn't. I was somewhere
yeah.
else all the
And
time.
the other big story for me is I remember dreaming I was adopted.
Did
Not because I
you not?
didn't want to be part of my family, because
Because you just
I
felt
love
so
my family.
strange. That was the way
Because
to
I
explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted my real family to come and pick me up and tell me we get you.
Yeah.
And I now understand that daydream, but I didn't at the time. But often used to just go, I really wish my real family would come and find me so
Yeah.
that I could just be accepted.
And what was it? I mean, because often with undiagnosed ADHD, particularly with girls, because it's never been recognized. It's only recently We've been able
Yeah.
to define ADHD in women and girls, and the same with ASD, the other major neurodiversity. Just in terms of terminology, tell me what neurodiversity is and your understanding of it.
For me,
Yeah,
emotional dysregulation is the biggest part, and that that boardroom sitting at the front of my head,
yeah,
just not being in control of the rest of it.
yeah,
I think when I did eventually get my diagnosis, the psychiatrist described it as the gorilla being in charge of the brain. And if we can
yeah.
just shut the gorilla up,
Yeah.
then and so for me it's definitely that emotional regulation that um if
But
I'm
I'm
really
meaning in terms of the term neurodiversity, what's your understanding of it as a term, as opposed to your specific
oh okay
expression?
so for me neurodiversity is the fact that my brain doesn't work in the way that others or the majority of the rest of the population
So how
work.
many people roughly are neurodiverse with sort of ADHD, do you think?
Around the world, I would say between 5 and 7%.
And this is based upon research, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
You know,
research
if
you've done,
you
but the World Health
no,
Organization.
not research I've done, but if you go into, I mean, I printed off some stats here because I can never remember statistics.
Same here, literally the
But
same.
I thought I'd print off some
Go.
stats just from Google that kind of say estimated global prevalence in children is about 5 to 7% for ADHD. In adults, 2.5 to 4%, though many are undiagnosed.
Right. Now, I want to stop us there because people need to understand this. There's, in terms of trying to understand what does that mean, it means that it's a significant part of the population. But when we see things that are cross-cultural and trans-historical, this is really these two very important terms. It means that it's stuff that people are born with that Mother Nature has put into the genetic code for some purpose. And we don't necessarily understand that purpose, but there's a reason for it. Okay. We've begun to understand the reason for ADHD. But unlike other things, there's very few things in human culture which you can say are cross-cultural. So
Yeah,
often around mental health issues, certain cultures have certain expressions of distress, but other cultures don't have them because it's very culture specific to that environment. And there's certain cultures, for example, which have a higher prevalence of trauma for obvious reasons. If you go to the Gaza right now, there's going to be a higher expression of post-traumatic stress disorder, of course, than there is in the UK. And but there's not going to be a greater expression of ADHD over there. It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same because it's not based upon environmental impact. It's based upon what is encoded biologically and passed down because there were reasons for it. The same with a autistic spectrum disorder. We've begun to find in the brains of monkeys the same proteins that exist in the brains of humans with ASD. And so we look at monkeys now behaviorally, and we can see that they display the same behavioral traits as humans with ASD. Now, when you get cross species like that, it tells you it's very, very important to notice that because there's absolutely is an important reason why that exists. Now, recent research in ASD is indicating that, sorry, in ADHD, is indicating that there's a really important survival mechanism for the human species in our diversity. And this is our ability to have split focus.
yeah,
So it's the ability to be part of a group, but also noticing if there's something in the bushes about to kill us. It's
yeah,
really helpful when you're in that sort of environment, but rarely are we in that type of environment. But it actually helped the human race survive and probably was of higher prevalence in the past than it is now. That's the current thinking. And it's really important people understand that because and you know this, I'm going to go back into your experience in a second. There is so much crap pumped out there about inventing this stuff. It's not invented. It has
no,
not been diagnosed properly because we didn't have the tools to understand it in the past. And because it hasn't been diagnosed properly, people's lives have been wrecked.
yeah,
Okay. And what's happening now is we are dealing with the wreckage of the past and helping people who otherwise would end up inappropriately on psych wards, hurting themselves, in addiction, etc., etc. Right? And so people really need to understand that. So the the sort of the angry old men on the news, and an angry old man at times, but the angry old men on the news who go, "Well, we were all right when we were three. You weren't all right when you were three. None of us were." And he was never pleasant to be undiagnosed ADHD. That's me off my soapbox. So it's
No,
important to say that.
absolutely. I mean, as I said, I did a little bit of research before coming on today, and 1798 was one of the first times this was described
Was it
in
really?
literature. Yeah, by Alexander Crichton, described
Fantastic.
attention problems in his medical text, an inquiry into the nature and origin of mental derangement. So we're not talking about something that has just been
No, that's
pulled out of
love that.
somebody's back head.
Send
It
me
is
that link after
absolutely,
the show. Send me that link. I want to read it. That's absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's
And
exactly.
so I just kind of think, we this has been around for years,
Yeah.
and random mutations happen all the time.
Yeah.
Genetically, it's part
It's
of
also
evolution,
this though
how
is
we got
more
here.
than random because it is transcultural and
Yes,
transhistorical. It's there for a reason, and we need to figure out what the reason is, and so that we
absolutely.
understand it.
So it probably started off as a random mutation, but has now had and then had a purpose, and that's why it's stayed with us all of this time.
Just want to say for people who are watching and may not understand how ADHD people relate to each other, because you and I are just doing it naturally now. We had that chat before the show. We do
Yeah.
interrupt each other like this, and it's fine. Neither of us are taking offense. In normal conversation, though, people don't get it, do they?
No, not at all. Not at all.
What
And
happens to you when you're talking to a normal? What sort of emotional state do you go into?
Um, oh, it's so difficult sometimes to because I want to overshare. Because that acceptance word that I used earlier
Yeah,
of wanting to be accepted. You want to kind of go, oh, that's me, that's me. I've had that experience, and please let me tell you all about it. And I'm going to go, and people have that view that the conversation needs to be all about you.
yeah,
And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm
no,
trying
that's
to
right.
connect with you. I'm trying to be accepted. I'm trying to show you that I can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not I'm trying to go, the world revolves around me because I'm so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Really important. And it's the sort of attention stuff gets the attention, but what doesn't get the attention is all the other stuff. So you're at school, you're not necessarily doing the typical attention getting behaviors. You're being relatively well behaved, I guess, in the classroom. What's your
Yes.
education experience like? Is the information going in? Are people understanding?
Um, Often not understanding. No, often sat there. I always had good study buddies that would help me get to grips with any concept that I didn't understand. I would say I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I can pick up things quickly if it's explained in a way that I get, but if I don't get it first time, I need to work at it.
And some people, of course, with ADHD, they don't have that function. So they, like the gorilla that the psychiatrist told you about, is working memory going to long-term memory, right?
Yeah.
And organizational frontal lobe memory. So, but often people with ADHD, they have problems with working memory and long-term memory. And it's nothing to do with intelligence. It's just in the ability to process information is
Yes.
blocked, right?
So I have to work harder to get things into my long-term memory. Reading a book, I've taken to listen to a lot more audiobooks or
I
apps that
just recently some of
summarize
them. It's a
books.
miracle.
Yeah,
It's an
apps that
absolute
summarize
miracle.
books have just been great. So give me a
It's
book in 20
amazing.
minutes, I
Yeah,
can deal with it.
yeah,
But ask me to listen to a book in over 6 hours, I've got to go back
yeah,
at least 17 times
yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah.
or if I'm reading a page, I have to read the same page 4 times.
Yeah, I'm the same with my attention. It just I just that information doesn't go in. So that's really and you're at school though, you're not obviously showing signs of distress, which a lot of ADHD kids do by
Yeah.
behavioral problems and all that sort of stuff. So you're sort of fitting in socially on the surface, I guess.
On the surface, but always like an outsider looking in, not quite knowing the rules of the game.
Yeah,
Not quite, I had friends,
yeah.
but not good friends. I didn't have deep connections with
That's that
people.
social butterfly thing.
Yes,
You would
absolutely.
land a little bit and then go and land somewhere else and then land some, but not really feel emotionally connected to people.
Absolutely. And a split personality.
Yeah.
Good at school and then out clubbing at the age of 14, drinking at the age of 14,
Yeah.
just making some poor choices there
Yeah.
because, and not necessarily people knowing that I was doing those things
You
because of
don't need to answer this question, but often with that comes sort of hypersexuality. Again, the desire for
absolutely. And,
connection.
and
That was your,
when we were talking earlier, that I think that was some of the things I alluded to about what I saw in my mum's history.
yeah.
And I've also experienced that searching for love, that searching for acceptance, and using sex as a means to find that acceptance, but actually it's not.
It
It's
becomes
just
quite hollowed out, doesn't it, after?
yeah, it's just a physical act. That's not love.
Yeah. And then you have the sort of prototypical emotional responses of somebody who's lonely and isolated, feels different. So feels lonely. Now, feeling lonely is different to looking lonely. And we now
Yes.
understand that. And how feeling lonely for a social animal is devastating,
Yeah.
potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of health outcomes, psychological health outcomes. You were talking to me before the show that you've had a variety of diagnoses throughout your life.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Do you want to list them, or how many have you got?
oh gosh. Well, I mean, anxiety, depression. Um, I was chronically overweight. I think now I am probably way less than I was when I was 14.
Yeah,
I've been up to 23 stone in my
sure.
life. I've had chronic obsession with overeating, with alcohol. Thankfully, I didn't find illegal drugs. I think I kind of went, if I go there, I'm going to go there in a big way, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and so thankfully didn't end up down that road, but I could absolutely have seen myself going down that road. Now I look back on it,
But you did
2020 vision is brilliant.
interestingly self-medicate the ADHD via stimulants, which often people do. So people will often get into like these caffeine drinks, but also things like cocaine and amphetamine and all that sort of stuff because it gives temporary relief from some of the symptoms, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But that
As
wasn't your route. You didn't go there.
no, it was definitely food, and it was definitely in my later life alcohol.
Yeah.
Um,
I when I was at uni, for example, we're talking about your uni experience. I discovered amphetamine, and suddenly I could do things. But actually, literally, the thing happened that you described was I then, within 6 months, did that complete over the top ADHD obsessive use of it, and
yeah.
smashed myself to bits on it. I mean, it was just like extraordinary how quick. And then I thought alcohol was safe. Right, exactly, exactly. Um, so you somehow get through school, but I'm guessing you're having emotional and psychological distress, which is not being communicated to people. What was
Yes.
that like for you? What sort of things were you experiencing?
Just complete isolation.
Yeah.
I think I was desperate to. I remember being 17 and midway through my A levels and saying, I'm going to go and join the Navy.
Right. Yes, 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 yes.
I wanted to run away.
Yeah.
And actually, now I realise that I've always been wanting to run away from myself,
Yes.
which is really flipping hard to do.
Yeah, quite, quite. But you go to
So,
university. Why did you end up going? Because you went into biomedical sciences, right?
yes.
What was, tell me
So
about that. How
the
did that?
only person I've really, not the only person, that's a very definitive statement. One of the most influential people in my world who absolutely loved everybody with unconditional positive regard was my grandmother, was my dad's
Right.
mum.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She had nothing in her life but love to give people. And she accepted everybody.
Yeah,
And when she passed away of cancer, it was one of the hardest things because then I suddenly felt alone.
yeah. Take your time. Take your time, Sarah.
Yeah, no.
Memories come up and then we have feelings about them. That's okay.
So I felt
Sounds like she
very
was wonderful, mate.
she was, I mean, even my siblings who knew her better than me because they're older than me talk about her with the same love and compassion.
But for
Because
you, one of the few people who could just, you felt like you were totally accepted by.
yes, absolutely. There was never any judgment in her whatsoever. There was never any, I'm not going to take you for who you are.
Yeah.
And so when
These
she
people in
passed
our life
away,
are so important in terms of life
yes,
outcomes. Without those people in our life outcomes are dreadful.
yeah,
But when we
and
have when we have that, at least that experience, that's enough as a reparative experience to enable us to have better outcomes. So she was extraordinary in your life, I can
yes,
see.
absolutely, absolutely. So I chose science. I'm just going to grab a tissue.
You go for it, mate. You
Then
take your time.
I chose science because I wanted to save the world.
Yeah,
I wanted to go and save the world from cancer.
great.
Because of that experience with her and losing her to cancer, it made me go, I'm going to go and find the cure for cancer. Now, my life hasn't taken that route, but that's one of the reasons why I became a teacher. Because if I can inspire the next person to want to study science, they may end up finding the cure for cancer. I
Super.
may teach the next person. And I have a great picture
Just
that
for
my
people who are listening to the show, because they don't know. Again, I get Sarah in a way that's very natural to me. And I've had the conversation before the show. So she went off, she did her science, she went off, got a career in pharmaceuticals, and then decided to become a teacher. Um, we've had that conversation. So Sarah's talked to me like everybody's had that conversation with her. And I know how your brain works. But they haven't. The people
And
listening.
I'm laughing because I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that
That's
bit.
right. No, you didn't forget it. It's just you've had that conversation. It's not relevant. It's just the way our brains work, right? That's fine. So just so people know, she had a very successful, Sarah had a very successful career in pharmaceuticals, with statins of all things. So it's actually contributed to saving many people's lives. Sort of, even though you downplay the fact that you never discovered the cure for cancer, you did actually save a lot of people's lives from heart attacks, etc., by your work in pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah,
That's the way. That's the truth of it. And statins were one of the most amazing medical breakthroughs from the UK ever in terms
yeah.
of the way it's improved the quality of life around the globe. So you actually did quite a lot there, Sarah. Let's not gloss over that. Um, then and then you were interested. Uh, Tell me the story. You went to you became a teacher. You decided to just change career, which
Yeah,
often happens with people with ADHD. Boom, going to do that now. Off you go
yes.
for whatever reason. Um, and then you were working with kids who were struggling. You could identify their particular type of struggle, whether they were diagnosed or not. You could go, "Oh, that's me," right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working in a school and I had a colleague's daughter in my class and I really felt
And we should remember, sorry to interrupt, but we should remember Sarah's not had her diagnosis yet. So this is all
no,
intuitive
yes.
on your part, right?
And I'm just seeing actually definitely intuitive. Sorry to answer your question. Absolutely, yes, definitely intuitive, and definitely I'm seeing a group of children that, even though I'm working in a school where we have relatively small
Yeah,
class
yeah,
sizes,
yeah,
um, they still need that personal attention. So I then go and say, okay, I can see this group. I was head of science. I wanted to, obviously it's in my interest as head of science to make sure that the science results are as good as
yeah,
possible because
yeah,
you want the best outcome for every child. So I put together a tutoring program for these students and I let them come in small groups of one and two, whatever they choose to feel most comfortable,
yeah,
because I'm very much about we need to make sure that they're comfortable with where they're at.
yeah,
And they improved their grades. They went from an E to a C, and
yeah,
actually, it was back when we had the old money of letters for grading, but they actually improved. And I suddenly went, I was always as a teacher kind of slightly against tutoring
oh,
because I didn't want parents to pay for the extra education. But then I realized that talking to somebody on a one-to-one basis like we're doing now
mhm,
is so much more powerful than being part of a group of 30.
yeah,
And for somebody who does suffer with ADHD or ASD, you can sit. Now I look back on, now I've got my diagnosis, and now I sit back and look at the fact that I could daydream my way through school. So can most other ADHD people.
yeah. And also,
And
like, what we understand about the condition now, the diversity now, is like the simple things like the clock in the classroom. Some kids with ADHD cannot read, that cannot follow a hand, so they can't tell it's an hour, but if you give them a numerical thing, they can understand it.
Yes.
But also you can do things like you can color code the zones. So even kids that can't understand that because they're too young, you were in the green, now we're in the orange, now we're in the red, and that tells them how to do things. It's like there's such a range of stuff we can do now that we understand this, which is
But
unintrusive, right?
one of the things that you just said there about the clock, and what I instantly thought of was the ticking of the clock.
Really? Right.
Any little noise like that
Distracted you
would
completely.
distract me. And
That's right.
even now, um,
You know
you know,
why? Because your brain is wired to look for that because it's a potential threat.
yes,
That's what we understand now. So for
yeah,
you, your brain is going, I've got a bunch of people whose lives I need to save because we're all together in this clan, this family group, and
yeah,
that is a saber-toothed tiger about to kill us. And
yeah,
it's like, it's impossible to ignore.
absolutely.
Absolutely impossible to ignore because our life is on the line. When we understand this stuff, there are the adaptations that we need to make in the classroom, in life, are tiny to make it possible for somebody with ADHD to flourish, right?
But on the flip side to that, then being a teacher sat in a classroom with 30 students, any little noise they made was
You were like,
absolutely
blah, blah, blah.
yeah. And so then you come across as a grumpy old cow
Yeah,
because you're saying everybody work in silence. And I don't want them to work in silence. I want them to talk to each other because I know talking to each other is what builds connections and builds neuropathic pathways and builds that learning.
yeah,
So I had this dichotomy. So I had to get out of the classroom
yeah.
because
It
it was
wasn't set up for
hurting
somebody
me.
with diversity, whether they're a teacher or a student, right?
No, absolutely. And I didn't understand that then. I was having regular days off because my overwhelm was so great. I needed the duvet day.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
I needed the day where I sat in bed with complete and utter
Yeah,
silence.
yeah, yeah. So
I
you
just,
then began to identify how you might work one to one or in small groups with kids. Is that right?
yes. Yeah.
And
So
against, I mean, you sort of was against your ethics to some extent, wasn't it? It was like, no,
absolutely.
we should. I can't do private tutoring. That's for posh toffs who've got loads of money, not for ordinary kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first iteration of my program was £50 a year because I was going to save the world. And I was going to get thousands of people to sign up at £50 a year because I wanted it to be accessible to everybody and I was going to give everybody personal attention. And then I realized that actually I need to make a living and I'm going to
Yeah,
get burnt out if I do it this way.
yeah, absolutely. Classic ADHD thing. I'll just obsess about this rather than be practical. But you've discovered, right, from the sort of tutoring that you can sort of develop individualized programs for kids with ADHD, diagnosed or not, that
Yes.
really helps them in terms of
Well,
academic achievement.
one of the things I used when I was studying a lot, and we talked about audiobooks earlier, for me, audio revision, I used to sit there with my Sony Walkman and my tape deck. Now, I'm really sorry if nobody knows what they are, but those who are old enough among us will remember the
I
Sony Walkman
remember.
tape deck. And I recorded myself making my notes. So when I put together a program, I've actually put together a program with 10-minute little revision tasks so that we can revise walking the dog, so we can multitask with earbuds in. And
The
that's where
only
I've,
way I got through my A levels was putting everything onto an audio tape.
yeah.
And I played it every night when I went to sleep.
And that's the basis of everything I do alongside accountability
Yeah,
and live check-ins.
yeah,
Absolutely with me on a small group basis because I think
completely.
we need that personal connection. We
Yeah.
can't be a separate to the system. We need to be within it.
And yeah, without a doubt, because we can't create ADHD Island, although I sort of do in my own personal life, I have to say.
Yeah,
But
me too. I've
like
got my
yesterday,
bubble.
I went out to see my friend yesterday. This is classic. You'll understand this more than most people. Um, I went out to see a mate. We went for a jog and then we had a coffee and then he just started introducing topics to talk about because we're friends. And then I just went "Bleh," like that at him. And like my friends know me, they understand this, they get it. Even if they don't have the diagnosis of me, they understand this is Noel, this is the way he is. But I still then sent him a WhatsApp saying, "Oh, thanks for letting me just talk at you." And he's like grinning, so it's fine. I enjoyed it. It's entertaining, and that's the
Yeah,
way it is. So I've
yeah.
sort of created my own ADHD island where people sort of tolerate how I am. Um, so you're doing the one-to-one teaching, and I should say we talked about this before the show, but Sarah is a teacher. She knows what she's doing. It isn't just made up stuff. She knows she's a professional
Oh no, I've got a master's in teaching.
and other sort of very impressive qualifications prior to that. You've developed more work as well with adults as well, I guess.
Yeah, so I got diagnosed last year, June the 25th, 2024. I had my appointment with the psychiatrist. I went through the Right to Choose program because the waiting lists are so long, and still had to wait a lengthy
And what's
period
the
of
Right to
time.
Choose program?
So the Right to Choose program is in the UK, and there are a lot of private providers that now have contracts with the NHS
Yeah.
because the waiting lists locally. When I went to see my GP, and I really struggled with whether I went to see my GP because I didn't want to be on the bandwagon. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be, going for the trendy ADHD diagnosis. But I knew it, and everything I read about it was me in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And so when I went to see the GP, they said, "Oh, the waiting list is 2 to 3 years locally." To even get put in front of somebody for a diagnosis. And I was like, okay, you do know I think I've got ADHD and I really can't wait that long. So I then explored the Right to Choose program, which is where you can get referred to one of these private companies
Okay. Yeah.
through the NHS, and they will. And even then, the waiting list for some of those places now are 6 months, 8 months,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's a large number of people being referred to them. So
Why?
I
I mean, like you'd think in the media, like, why would it be that long? It's just people making shit up. I mean, tell us about the diagnosis. Is it just made up crap, or what goes on?
Oh gosh, I mean, I have friends who are medical professionals who work in this arena, and there is something like 60 to 75% of workload that comes through that is not even put in front of a medical profession. These referrals are not put in front of a medical professional because they are not meeting the DSM criteria
Yeah.
on paper
Yeah.
before they even get. So we're not over diagnosing people. We are, and I don't see medical professionals going, "Oh, this
Last
is
time I
trendy."
saw an ADHD diagnosis form, it was like literally that thick because it was about 50 pages long or something.
Yeah. And I just don't see a psychiatrist spending all of those years to qualify to just tick people off because they say they've got ADHD.
Yeah.
It's just, what medical professional has that unethical a practice to
There might be one or
diagnose
two, to be
somebody?
honest, but certainly not as a whole profession. It's not
Yeah,
happening.
and not
That's correct.
globally,
That's fine. That's fine.
you know.
Also, we come back to this. The numbers are consistent globally. So
Yeah,
for people to say this is made up, what you're suggesting is that there's a worldwide conspiracy of health professionals inventing this shit, which is not true. It's just
exactly.
obviously
And
not true.
that's my point completely.
Yeah.
Why would we say this is overdiagnosed?
Yeah. Yeah. It's underdiagnosed, if anything. Particularly around women. Can you tell me why, in your experience? Because it's not unfamiliar to me to come across women who don't get diagnoses around ASD or ADHD until their 40s, 50s, even 60s. So why do you think that is?
I liken it to, we're taught as young children to put makeup on as women. And we are taught as young children to
Brilliant say.
mask. And
Yeah.
if you look at any of the 1950s Be a Good Housewife book, it's all present yourself with calm and decorum, and don't show the rest of the world what you're thinking. That's what we do. That's what we've been doing. And then every now and again, it's like this dragon comes out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
My friend calls it her gully. I don't know why she calls it gully, but it's just like gully comes out and tells the rest of the world what she thinks,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then gets put back in the box.
Yeah, yeah. It's very familiar stuff. very familiar stuff. And I left one of the gyms I used to use because they were just becoming so intolerant of my diversity. And sort of projecting all sorts of shit onto it, which isn't true. And I've started with another gym that don't do that. But they will eventually get fed up with my diversity as well.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
And I've recently I struggle with relationships, as lots of us do.
Yeah.
Um, I've recently had an emotional outburst when I was drinking. It was late last year,
Yeah.
and then handled the situation with what I thought was fair challenge, that then comes across as complete aggression,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
which
So, in
which
terms of the
sometimes,
food and the drink and the medication post-diagnosis, so you've had a long history of trying to manage some of the loneliness, the psychological outfall, the distress that you experience
yeah,
um, through food and drink, very familiar to people. Um, Now you've got the diagnosis, you started on medication, you're titrating, you say. Where
yes.
is all of that stuff now in the mix, would you say, for yourself?
Well, I think we said when we were talking earlier, how did I feel about getting the diagnosis? And
Yeah.
I think I used two words: grief and relief.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think relief that I can now go, I'm not absolutely this awful person that I've always thought I was.
That's right.
I'm not this awful person that is choosing to make these decisions to hurt people.
Yeah.
That's never my intention. I'm not, but the relief, the grief over, if I had the diagnosis when I needed it,
Yeah.
way back when I was younger, I would have acted so very differently or had different support throughout my life.
Yeah.
So, one of the stories we talked about, and I think this is really important to be open about, because one of the things I said was that I've had 11 miscarriages.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's been tough to deal with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's been really, really tough, and grief and emotion. And I've projected that on, oh, projection's another thing I do very well, projected that emotion onto other people massively.
Mhm.
But the one thing that it did give me was a misdiagnosis of depression, because when you sit in front of a GP and go, I'm not coping, I'm not, and then they look at your history and they go, well, of course you're not coping. You've had 11 miscarriages. Anybody wouldn't cope with that. But I think I needed different kinds of support. And if I'd have had the ADHD diagnosis, and I probably would have got different support.
Yeah.
And the really important thing for me that I really wanted to share, because I think we don't talk about this enough,
Yeah.
is how low I got at that point, because I couldn't see I had a purpose.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I wanted to take my own life, and I
Yeah.
actually attempted it twice.
So just,
Um,
I always do this when we start talking about potentially what we call triggering subjects.
yeah,
I usually stop and say, right, if anybody's listening to this and you really identify with this, and it may bring up thoughts and feelings, particularly if it brings up thoughts and feelings of wanting to hurt yourself, it's really important you understand you're not alone. I would recommend that you give the Samaritans a call right now. Don't bother listening to the rest of this show. Put it on pause. Go and chat to the Samaritans first, or a mate, or whoever. Pick up that phone, make a call, know that you're not alone, that you're having a temporary feeling which will pass, and there is a solution to all of this. That's really important for people to understand. Carry on, Sarah. So you had these
but
suicidal ideation experiences,
yeah,
right?
and that's why I wanted to talk about it, is because I really, really want people to know that there is another side to those feelings, that you can work through them, that you
Yeah.
can get to a point where you are sat in front of a wonderful human being on their podcast, sharing that and feeling brave enough to share that.
How are
And
you doing around that now in terms of the way your brain's functioning, how you feel about yourself? Where are you at with all that now?
um when I mean, I've taken my medication this morning. I've
Okay.
had one day off during titration without my medication, and
Yeah.
I suddenly had that hyper anxiety. And that's the one thing I would say I've reflected on, is that the medication doesn't take away the ADHD. You don't have a cure.
Yeah.
What you have is a lessening of symptoms,
Yes. Yes.
is a greater focus or concentration or whatever it does for you, because it's going to work differently in different people, and it's not a magic bullet, and it doesn't suddenly cure you from ADHD. We've not got it just helps
And it
slightly.
certainly doesn't cure you from the fact that for the life before that, you've got to
No.
treat it badly. I mean, it sort of doesn't deal with that, right? But it
Yeah.
does make the brain function differently or more normally. So
Yes.
information can be processed more effectively. That's what the medication does, right?
Yeah,
It helps
absolutely.
information processing, whether that's emotional information or academic information or relational information, social cues, all that sort of stuff. Suddenly you notice those things. Well, that's what people say. Is that how it works for you as well?
That's how it helps me, but when it does wear off, you notice it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you a bit of a personal story from
Oh,
last
go,
night,
go.
really. So I get absolutely engrossed in something. I'm editing the very first raw draft of my book, and I don't realize it's got dark outside because I'm completely hyper
Yes,
focused on
yes,
this.
yes, yes, yes.
And my husband comes up and goes, I thought
Haven't
we were
seen
going
you
to
in a
spend the
week. Are
evening
you all
together.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm getting used to the back of your head and I'm like, I'm so, I don't want you to feel that way, but I didn't realize I was doing that because my brain wasn't thinking about you. My brain was thinking about what it was doing.
Yeah. And that, again, is another interesting thing about the condition or the diversity, is that complete ability to be absorbed is also a very useful skill as well.
Yes.
And many people with ADHD throughout, we won't go into it, but throughout history have been very profoundly important people because of that capacity to drill down into a subject when necessary. Um, you do coaching for adults with ADHD as well as the
Yeah,
teaching,
so
right?
so after my diagnosis, I've gone through a number of learning. I've trained to be a counselor.
Yeah.
I'm training to be. I've trained to be a life coach.
Yeah.
I've got a certification in ADHD coaching, and signed up for more higher level courses as well to keep that training going, because I think it's what I want to say to every woman who's listening to this, or anybody, not just women, this is not a sexist thing, but anybody who's feeling like anything I've said is resonating with them, just remember you're not broken. You
Yeah.
don't need fixing.
Let's go with the gender thing because I think you are making an important point. There is still a gender differentiation in terms of power and access to services. And I think we are clear these days that health services have failed to diagnose women at the rate they should be. Because
Yeah.
because ADHD isn't restricted to a particular sex or gender. Yet, if you looked at the early diagnosis, you'd think it was all male, and it never has
Yes.
been, right? And
Yeah.
it's really important we rebalance that, and we rebalance it with sensitive, appropriate services that understand women's needs. So I don't think you're being sexist when you say that. I actually think it's really important you say that, and that we do in this area, like we would with men, we would say to men very clearly, as a mental health professional, I'd say to men, it's really important that you identify early signs of depression and anxiety because you're at higher risk of killing yourself from suicide. 75% of suicides are men, right? That's
Yeah.
it. And that's not sexist, it's a statement of fact, right?
Yes.
And we have to target services to what we know are facts. What we know is a fact is that ASD and ADHD is underdiagnosed in women because of the capacity women have to socially mask,
Yeah.
right? And to fit in, and women are forced to socially mask, and therefore we don't see the signs and symptoms, and women are being devastated because of this. So it's not sexist, it's pointing at a real thing. We do have to finish there, unfortunately. Sorry. And
No.
again, for people who are listening to this and thinking that's all very precipitous and all that sort of stuff, this is normal for people like me and Sarah. This is the way we are.
Yeah.
I feel totally comfortable with her. She feels totally comfortable with me. She's having a great time, I promise you. Um, Afterwards, she's going to go like I do, ruminate a little bit on it. I should have said that. Should have said that. Now, I'm going to reassure you, Sarah, we're going to get you back on. So, all the things that you now go off and ruminate about, you can then come back and tell us. All right.
Excellent. I would be
So,
delighted to.
relax that brain.
I'll write them all down.
Write them all down and come back another time. I'll get Teresa to reach out to you. How do people get hold of you, Sarah? Have you got a website or
So my for my coaching, for my tutoring side of things, www.sciencecafe.co.uk.
Super.
And I promise that if anybody wants to email me, sarah@sarahkennettcoaching.co.uk, I will reply to every single one of you.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So say those two again.
So www.sciencecafe.co.uk for
Yeah.
the education, and Sarah@sarahkennettcoaching, KENNETT.co.uk.
Super duper. That's really lovely. You stay there. Sarah, it's been such a pleasure to get you on. And we had that classic ADHD thing of missing each other and me just being a dimwit. But there you go.
I understood
I'm all
completely.
right. I'm all right. I'm not broken. I'm just different. So you stay there. Look, folks, I hope you've got as much from this as I have, particularly those people with ADHD, diagnosed or not. You may be recognizing yourself in this conversation. If you do, that's great. That's great. Go and find other people with ADHD, diagnosed or not. Don't worry about whether you get diagnosed. I think the diagnosis can really help people because it gives you access to medication should you choose to use it. I
Yeah.
choose not to use medication because I said to Sarah before the show started, I've adapted my life so that I don't need that type of functioning most of the time. And I can't be asked to wait 2 years. I could probably pay for a diagnosis, but I don't need to anymore. But particularly if you're younger, my experience is if you're going to try and fit into society as it is, then the medication will likely give you the key that allows you to do that, that allows you to open up that doorway.
And maybe have some strengths to find some strategies that then work for you so that you could come off the medication in the future
And the
or
great thing
develop
about
a life that works for
medication is
that.
it's like this. It's like your glasses. You put it on, they work for a certain amount of hours, and then they stop working, and then you take them off, and you go back to being who you are. And
Yeah.
that's fine. You don't have to take them at the weekends. You don't have to do any of that stuff. But so look after yourselves, folks. You stay there, Sarah. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Lovely to have you on today. Hope you got as much from this. Do reach out to Sarah or send me messages, and I'll pass them on to her. I'm going to say goodbye for now.